Oh my goodness. I am so lucky to have had, I don't know how many years of friendship. I know we don't talk that much, Win, but I'm so glad to have you on the show. Everybody, this is Winn Fuqua. When you and I go back to 2018, I told you I was going to tell you the version that I know. I don't know if you have a version of our meet cute or whatever. But I went to, and I want to say it was an NSA meeting, National Speaker Association meeting. I wasn't a member, but I'd gone to a couple of events, and so in this particular event, I sat next to you during the main speech or the main
Yeah.
part of the meeting where
Good.
somebody was giving a speech. And I don't know if they had us do some kind of partner work or something, or if you and I just ended up chatting. But I was just starting my career as a professional speaker, and going solo, having my own business, and you and I exchanged cards because you were at the time doing videography and photography, and I was like, oh my gosh, I might need a video someday. I know that one of my mentors told me that I need to get some reels. And so you were the person that I had in my back pocket, so to speak. And you did actually record my very first sizzle reel. And yeah, I'm so grateful that we met that day. What is your memory of the time we met?
Well, it was a Saturday morning. I
Oh my
remember that.
gosh.
And it was a cold, rainy December Saturday morning. And we walked in together. I saw you getting out of the car. And
No, there's no way. There's no way you remember more details than me, but
not
okay.
much. No, Valerie, I remember meeting you there. I know we sat next to each other. And I pass cards out wherever I go. I could be at the gas station and I'll hand somebody my business card. So you never know who's going to call you or who needs your services or how you can help them. So yeah, we just connected. We hit it off. We're two type A personalities. And so it was easy for us to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then you called me and said, hey, I'm doing this workshop down at the Crescent or no, down at the
It was
Adolphus
Adolphus, yeah, the Adolphus
downtown. And
Hotel.
I thought, oh, Adolphus. Wow. Okay. And so I went in and I videoed your workshop that day. And I did not realize that I was the first person to put you on camera. I mean, you did wonderful. I thought you'd been doing that for years. The
Mm,
Yeah, and then we put together a small video for you, and
yeah.
here we are years later,
Look
still,
at that. Well,
yeah,
not even that. Just so that was the first interaction, and it was, I hired you to do that, but then you were also on my first podcast. I think you were one of the earlier episodes too, and I can't remember all the things that I I reached out to you for, but initially I remember also you talked to me a lot about like lighting my space when I did video. I mean, you taught me so many things when I just want to give you credit because a lot of the confidence that I have in doing podcasts like this, for example, and some of the things that I learned about the sizzle reel process, right? And by the way, for those listening, the sizzle reel is basically that like 2 to 3 minute video that you'll see a professional speaker do that highlights some of their talk and the experience with the audience, etc. The way you edited that, you also shared music with me that I could use for I mean, there were so many things that I reached out to you for. And I wonder, you said you give out your business cards all over the place, but how many people do you find yourself after you've done that initial exchange, or maybe you've even done a project for them? How do you go about maintaining those connections with people? Do you, or is it just like a one and done?
sometimes it's a one and done. It kind of depends on the project and what we're doing. I was an advertising photographer and videographer for 30 years, and I don't do that. That's not part of what I do now. But back then, it was pretty much a one and done, and I wasn't really good at keeping up with my past clients. I should have been doing a newsletter once a month, or at least calling my top 15 clients once a year. And I just, it seemed like I had a lot of work and things just snowballed. So I didn't ever go back and follow up with a lot of my past clients. So I was
Hmm.
very remiss in doing that. And that's something that I try to do better today. But when we're all busy and we
Yeah.
have clients in front of us and we're on new projects, it's hard to say, oh, well, I want to go back and talk to that other person. So I
Yeah.
haven't been, I usually don't keep up with too many people. I've got maybe, 20 people that I touch base with yearly or regularly.
Really?
I've got maybe 3 or 4 guy friends that I talk to them every month. We're calling back and forth or we're sending emails or, hey,
Yeah.
here's a joke I heard. But, that's more on a personal level.
Right.
Yeah. But a professional level, like with me and you'll ask me a question, I'll respond in text, and I'm like, oh, we hadn't talked for 4 months. Or, oh,
Or
I
a
missed that.
year.
Yeah, or I missed that question 3 months ago. Why didn't she call me and say, Winn, where are you?
Uh,
So I think with text, it's easier because you can put in the phone number, the name, and hopefully all their conversation comes up.
mhm.
Um, but to answer your question, you know, it's hit or miss for me.
It's hit or miss. But I
Yeah.
think that's normal. And even professionally, because I do connect with so many different people, some of them I do end up connecting with people like you, right? Because you become uh, a reference, you're a person that I know you're easy to talk to. I think that's one of the things about you that made you so approachable is that you're so easy to talk to. You answer questions, you're friendly, you're fun, you're kind. That whole video experience, I was actually doing a workshop that you were capturing, but you made it like so simple and, oh, Valerie, just do this. Oh, Valerie, I think all of those things, the way in which you were being during the time I worked with you, made it that you became that person that I could just go to and ask anything, right? Not
Right.
taking advantage,
Yes.
obviously, of your business and expertise, but I just knew that, okay, you know what? Just call Winn and see what he thinks.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
people don't inspire that same level of closeness, or they're not as approachable sometimes. And I think for me, that's where that, okay, maybe he's a one and done. Okay, I got what I needed from this person and now we move on, right? Or
Yeah.
sometimes, like you said, people just were just busy and there's so many other priorities that doesn't become one because the connection maybe was not as strong from the outset.
I think that's true. I want to be the guy. We all know a guy. Oh, do you know the guy that can, fix your car? Or do you know a guy that can, recommend a great restaurant? It's like a great hotel. They've got that concierge in front of the lobby that just knows everything about the city.
Yeah.
He's got all guys, and I want to be the guy in your life that you can call,
Mm.
whether it's for photography or nowadays, home repair or painting.
Yeah.
Um, you're my guy, Val. You're my guy for the speaking industry. I'm getting into speaking again after COVID,
Yeah.
and you're one of the first people I reached out to because I knew you're friendly, you're a professional speaker, you'll answer my questions and I can count, I can trust you to be a mentor to
Mm.
me for the speaking industry, like I
Mm.
was a mentor to you for the
Yeah.
video photo industry
Yeah.
back then. Yeah, you started your career and I was there for you, so now you're there for me. And it's all in
100%.
our circle. It all comes around.
Ah, so yeah, I think that's brilliant the way you said that because so much of it's unconscious. I never had I didn't create a list of here are the people that I can call for XYZ, right? It again, just because of the exchange we had, and it was an emotional memory of something positive. And it sounds like for you was the same, my willingness to be able to share. But you said something interesting about in my case, someone that you can trust about this. So what role, like if you're thinking not just about our relationship here, but also thinking about all the people that you're reaching out to or you've reached out to now as you're moving towards going back into the speaking industry, what's your criteria? How do you know who to reach out to? How do you know if this is the person who has the credibility or the trust for you?
Probably last about 3 months ago, I made a list of I went through my database and I looked on LinkedIn, all my connections on LinkedIn. And, we both probably have 5,000 connections on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and I know 20 of them. Yeah. Just because we have a connection doesn't mean I know you. So
Yeah.
I went through, I wrote down about 25 names of people that I know, um, that had something to do with the speaking industry. And then I started looking at them closer and saying, okay, I know Waldo Waldman, I know Mary Kelly, I know Dean Lindsay, but out of those, which ones would take my call and which ones would, listen to my question and give me, more than 5 seconds of feedback. And I went down the list and I was like, okay, those are those are the big dogs,
Mm,
national, the international speakers.
yeah.
The way, I'll ask them questions at the end of this year because that's hopefully they'll be ready for my question. But right now, starting out, who has been a speaker, 10 years or less? Who do I know that's friendly? Who do I know that knows me? Who do I know that owes me? and,
Aha.
and
Calling
that
those chits.
yeah,
Calling
oh, she's
favors.
called me 5 times. Okay, I think I can call her now.
I think I was in that category. You're like, okay, she's called and texted me enough. Now it's my turn.
Yeah, and whether and whether you had not called me or not, I knew that you're a past client. We had kept up over the years. Now we don't talk every month.
Mm-mm.
We're not best friends. I'm not gonna portray to the audience that, oh, you know me, and that
Mm,
we hang out together.
no.
But we know each other to be honest with each other and take each
Yeah.
other's call.
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
It's just answering and just saying, hey, Val, I got this question. Can I get 5 minutes of your time?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, next Tuesday at 10, let's talk for 10 minutes. And then we're on the phone for 45 minutes.
We get on the roll. Well, look, since we're like that, like you said, we're not BFFs, but we're friendly enough and we'll take each other's call. I should let
Yeah.
you know that I don't like being called Val. It's just
Val.
not my favorite. I love the name Valerie. So now that you're at that level, some people call me Val, but they're not going to get a call or I'm not taking their call. So they don't have to
Yeah,
worry
yeah.
about being
Well, it's
corrected.
not worth it's not worth you telling them because they're not that. Well, thank you for Valerie for telling me that. Yes, yes, I got it. Okay. And
Oh,
see,
it's brilliant.
yeah, and see for the audience out there, you have different levels of friends. You have
Yeah.
different levels of contacts. Um,
Yes.
I probably met over the years at NSA when I was there for 4 years. I met 150 people. I only became associated with 20 or 30 of those people.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, and
And
it's not good or bad. It's just a thing.
right.
But the people I got to know and I enjoy talking to are people like me. Smiley on your face, friendly, want to
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
They're
Helpful.
helpful. They're givers first.
Yeah. Givers first. Oh, that's so good. You're right. I think so. I didn't go to many, but I went to maybe like three or four meetings for the National Speaker Association. And I didn't find that same vibe or connection with other people. I met some nice people, very polite, but you're the only one out of those four events and occasions that I've kept up with, like, and that
Okay.
we've had regular conversations. Now you mentioned Dean Lindsay. I know Dean as well. He and I chatted because we connected over the fact that he and I had both been in Up with People, which is this international musical extravaganza that we did in our youth. And so
Okay.
we had that connection. Although we weren't there together, we were able to have this meaningful conversation about it. But it was
Sure.
fascinating that, what you're talking about, you have different levels of connections. So, so first of all, I have a couple questions for you. One, you have already mentioned you're transitioning from all the videography, photography stuff that you used to do now post-pandemic, getting into some of this other like handyman repair work, but then you're going back into speaking again. So talk to us a little bit about like how are you who are you reaching out to, or what's your strategy in figuring out how to pivot back into speaking or pivoting into this the handyman work. Give me a sense of where the shift is coming from and how you're going about it.
Okay. You bet. I was a photographer for 30 years. When the pandemic hit, my business just stopped. My phone stopped ringing because no one was in the office, no one had meetings, no one was getting married, no one needed a photographer anymore.
Yeah.
So I became a handyman. We've owned 5 houses. I've worked on all of them in some way. And after a month on the couch, my wife said, "Hey, stop watching Netflix and go get money, go get a job. And it was her idea. I became a handyman, and I thought, I'm a photographer. Hey, I'm hot stuff, and a handyman just works with, that's not important.
Yeah.
But I put a notice on next door. The day after that, I was painting a little girl's bedroom because she wanted to go from pink to blue. She wasn't a little girl anymore. She was a small teen, a young teenager. So she wanted an updated color. And I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. It was great. And so for the past 5 years, I've just been helping homeowners with home improvement projects.
Mm-hmm.
I really scaled back on what I do. Now I'm more of a home remodeler than a home handyman.
Okay.
But the way I get clients there is the same way I got clients as a professional photographer.
How's that?
Just reaching out to my network, calling them, letting them know what I'm doing. I'm on Nextdoor, Instagram, and Facebook. I post there regularly, which I never did as a photographer because, after 20, 25 years as a photographer, you have a built-in clientele. They call you back every year.
Yeah.
Um, as a handyman or home improvement remodeler or trades guy, whatever you want to call me, I didn't have that. Now, after 5 years, yes, I've got regular clients that call me regularly saying, hey, Winn, our bedroom needs painting, but also our deck needs staining, and we've got the garage door that needs to be replaced, and different things go on. Now with my getting back into speaking, again, it goes back to that list I made that you were on. And I was like, okay, I've got 1,000 questions. Who can help me get to my next level of speaking?
Yeah.
And I worked with a professional speaker last year for 6 months, crafting my speech.
Yeah.
And now it's getting out there and giving my speech. And, okay, how do I approach the associations and the trade shows, and, how do I do the business of speaking now, not the speaking itself?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
photography, it's easy to be a photographer. If you've got an iPhone, you're a photographer. Being in the business of photography is hard.
It's different.
As a handyman, if anybody's got a hammer, they can be a handyman, but how do you deal with those clients?
Yeah.
And for me, I'm dealing with all 3 clients exactly the same way.
Right.
It's it's customer service. It's giving them more than they pay for. It's giving them value for their money, and for and just having a great experience with everybody I deal with, no matter what I'm selling them.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think, the transition there's such a there are some things in common right now. Business entrepreneur is really the one thing that all of those 3 areas that you've described, whether you're photography or whether you're doing the handyman repair, renovation or remodeling,
Handyman.
home improvement remodeling expert, and now going into speaking, like all of those are entrepreneurship, and ideas, right, or businesses. How have you benefited, when you think about the people that you've been reaching out to, those 25 that you've reached out to? How have they supported and or guided you in this? Give few examples of when you've reached out to someone, like what's your approach? How have you benefited from their support or guidance?
I start very simple with just a text,
Okay.
reaching out to them, because I think a lot of people look at text more than email. And say, hey, I've got something I want to, I've got something I want to visit with you about for 5 minutes. Something I'm doing new this year, and I'd love to get your advice. Can we set up a 5-minute phone call? And the important thing there is I'm asking for their advice, and everybody loves to give advice. 90% of those people texted back and said, you bet, Winn. I think with you and one other person, y'all called immediately when you got my text and said, hey, let's just, can we talk now? Sure, yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So I start with the text, and it's just very simple, very, not long, not hard at all.
Yeah.
And then if we can set up a phone call, great. If not, I'll call them in a few days, say, hey, I got you. I hope you got my text. I just want to visit with you. I'm becoming, again, a public speaker, and I have some questions. If they answer, great. If not, I've got 20 other people that are going to give me good advice.
Yeah. But 90%, that's pretty good, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and some of the advice I take,
Mhm.
some I take with a grain of salt. I'm like, okay. And so, you know, I'm not going to call Waldo and the national speakers because their advice wouldn't pertain to what I'm doing in my stage of my life right now.
Mm.
For your, you know, you're more recent into this, the
Yeah.
last 10 years or so. So I can send you my one sheet or info sheet or whatever you call it, and you can look and go, oh yeah, I've got one. This is what I do. For
Yeah.
those guys don't have the same material that you and I have.
Right.
They're way
They're in
ahead
a
of that.
different, yeah,
Yeah, they're
level
in a
right now.
different league.
Yeah.
Uh, so the people that I've really gotten great advice from are people that have, you know, been there and done that recently.
Okay.
I see that, and I think that they are successful.
Mm.
I want to associate myself with successful people that I want to be like.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I think for me, beyond the approachability and all that, the credibility is important. And it doesn't have to be credible. I mean, it doesn't have to be credibility in that they do exactly the same. I know sometimes I even look for someone that's successful, but not in the same way that I would want to be successful, because
Sure.
I think, first of all, I'm not there to compete, or I'm not there to take any of, I don't want to be perceived as a taker of like, hey, you're doing this, I want to do that too.
Right.
It's a little too on the nose, but if I know that you're a successful entrepreneur, or you're doing something in a way that I'm like, I probably could leverage that, I might reach out, right, to you.
Yeah.
So even although we're both focusing on speaking, the audiences that we're looking for are different, right? The experiences that we have and what we want to share come from different worlds. So I think, it's a little, oh, safe is not the best word to use, but more comfortable talking to someone that won't be perceiving my request or my need to connect as a, hey, they want to get my trade secrets or
Right.
whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
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 That's,
Well,
oh,
and
interesting.
you know, you give me a form. Let's say you send out a form to your prospects that you want to
Yeah.
talk to. And I know, you know, when we talked about how you prospect for speaking engagements, it's going to be totally different than how I do it. You're very
Mm,
organic.
yeah.
You know, you've been out there, so you're getting speaking engagements from when you speak.
Hmm.
But now I need to go out and reach out and start getting speaking gigs to speak.
Yeah.
Um, or call back the people I used to speak for before COVID and say, hey, I've got a new talk. Can I come back in and visit with you?
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
so I don't think leverage is the right word. I think learn from who you're
Yeah.
talking to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just, you know, ideas are free. If, you know, if they're
Mhm.
not comfortable giving you their knowledge, then most likely they're not going to be on the phone with you.
No. Yeah. Those are
Uh,
probably that 10% that did not respond.
yeah,
I don't want
yeah.
to judge. I don't want to judge the 25 folks that you reached out to, but yeah, it could be,
Mhm.
right?
You
Hmm.
know, I look for new, not new, I look for handyman and GCs, general contractors all the time.
Okay.
And I reach out to probably three or four a month,
Oh.
and hardly nobody calls me back. And I've got
Oh.
business to give to them. You know,
Huh.
I don't do whole house renovations. I don't do add-on, you know, mother-in-law suite add-ons. And I
Okay.
have people ask me for that, and I'm like, if I just got, you know, one or two calls from a GC that was interested in what I do and want to get
Yeah.
to know me a little bit,
Yeah.
they'd have those referrals.
So,
And
okay, wait. You're saying that you have this business that you're not able to do, and you're looking to refer it to someone else, but those individuals they're not returning your call?
right.
And these are people you know.
Um, I don't know them personally, but I've met them like at Sherwin-Williams, or I've gone up to Home Depot, you know, and I've said, hey, oh,
Oh,
I see your truck. Nice truck, man. Yeah. You know, and I connect with them for, you know, 5 seconds.
okay.
And either they're too busy, and that's fine, or they don't, you know, they think I want their business. It's just,
Hmm.
yeah, it's totally weird. And some of them I do know. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
couple of them that I do know that they don't take me, I don't know if they don't take me seriously because I haven't been in the trades that long,
Okay.
or what, but you know, it's like, okay, that's fine. They don't want the business. Fine.
Wow, that's disappointing.
Yeah. But it's like when I call other speakers and want information from them, or, I want their help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's tons of speaking business out there.
Yeah.
They should not be afraid. There's tons of renovation
Yeah.
business out there. When I was a photographer, I was one of the friendliest people in the photography association, because I wasn't scared if anybody took my business.
Ah,
It's because no one can do business the way I do it, the way you do.
100%.
Our
Yes.
clients love us because we are who we are.
Of who we are, not just what we do.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would 100% agree.
Because there's 1,000 people in Dallas that do what you do. There's 10,000 that do what I do. But 99.9% of those people only want to use us
Mm,
because we like the way
yeah.
we. I've got one. Here's a story for you, Valerie. Um, I've got one client. I've got one prospect that calls me. Usually, she's called me 3 times so far in the last 3 months.
Okay.
And she prefaces with going, "When I called you last month and you couldn't help me, but do you know someone that can do this?"
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, Betty, I do. I'm sorry, I don't stain the deck, but I do know somebody that can do that. Betty,
Yeah.
I don't put in toilets, but let me give you Pablo's number. He's wonderful. You tell him
Yeah.
I gave him your number, and he'll call right over. Use my name, Betty. And this is someone that just keeps trying to
Yeah.
give me business, but I'm the guy. She knows I'm the guy. I know a lot of people. That's all it takes.
Yes. That's fascinating because I think that's the other piece where we want someone that, is credible, that will be able to share their expertise or resources or whatever. When you surround yourself with that, you create a circle of people that you have access to like that. Other people also see that and they want to get connected. So it's almost a way to say, hey, Betty trusts you. She knows that you're the guy, right? That you, and she also knows how honest and hardworking. So it's likely that whoever you refer to her will also have that stamp of approval, the Winn stamp of approval.
Yes, yeah. I've got
Hmm.
a list of 10 tradesmen, that I call it Wynn's favorite list, that I give out when I go on prospects. And
Hmm.
I say, here, if you need a plumber, if you need an electrician, if you need an insulation guy, I said, these are the guys I know that have been in my house, they'll return your call and you can trust them. Put this in your junk drawer for a rainy day. And these are people that, they're not my clients yet. I
Yeah.
just want to help them not get ripped off by another tradesman.
Yeah.
And I want them to know good people. And they always, that just helps my credibility. They're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
if you trust them, I don't even know you, but if you trust them, then I must trust them. And I
That's
trust you.
fascinating.
So
There,
it's
there's
giving value before they even ask
yeah.
you for it.
Yeah. There's this there's a book called The Trusted Advisor. I'll put it in the show notes. I can't
Okay.
remember the name of the author right now, but they have in the book this framework called the trust equation. And I talk a lot about this in my coaching with clients, that trust actually is comprised of 4 different elements. One is credibility, is that are you the person that people like trust, that that what you're talking about, right? You have the knowledge and skills that you say you do. The second one is reliability. Do you show up the way you said you would show up? Do you walk your talk? Are you making promises and fulfilling them? And the third one is intimacy. Intimacy, knowing like there's approachability, friendship, there's openness, there's something that you're curious and about them, that just is not a transaction, right? And then when those 3 things are high, trustworthiness is very high. The one thing that could actually diminish trustworthiness, even if those 3 things are high, is what's called self-orientation. And self-orientation is how much we think about ourselves first versus the other person. And you're having this Wynn's favorite list card that you give to people shows your very low self-orientation. Like, hey, I may not be able to do this job, but here's 10 people that I think will absolutely do a great job that I endorse, right? And I think those are all the elements that create really high trust relationships with clients, potential clients, prospective clients. So interesting.
Yeah.
That's,
Oh, we could have a whole podcast series on that alone.
I know, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Valerie, that is gold right there.
Hmm.
And I've not thought about it. I've thought about individual pieces of that, of course, over the years, but I never thought about putting it together in that order.
Yeah.
The last step, that last step you say is it's
Self-orientation.
yeah, self-orientation. I never thought about that, and that is right on point. Yes.
You keep giving those examples though, that, you be a giver first, right? You have this, put this in your junk drawer, right? So my question is what is your favorite thing to give people in your network or in your circle? Like, what is it, that kind of these referrals? What is it that you love giving that you just can't help it?
Well, where I am today in my life, it's referrals.
Referrals.
Yeah, because I want your plumbing problem to be fixed by the best plumber in Dallas, which is Pablo. Um,
Mm.
I want my neighbor down the street. She came over for football last night, and she had a plumbing problem. She knew Pablo, and she called this morning and said, "Hey, Pablo can't come out until Thursday. What's your second choice?" I'm like, "Oh, well, call Chris. Pablo's busy. Chris will help you out." And Chris is coming over this afternoon. Um, but I think
Yeah.
I like giving out just referrals. Just being helpful. When I was and now I like giving out photographers' names. I've got a law firm
Mm.
called me recently and said, "Hey, Winn, we've got a black tie event. Do you want to do it?" And I'm like,
Not
"No,
anymore.
I don't. I'm sorry. I don't, don't tell my wife I said no."
Yeah.
I was like, "No, here, call Nate. Nate's the guy. He does, he handles anything I don't want to do, for event photography. Nate, I refer Nate. If
Mm.
it's a headshot, I refer Michelle." Um,
Okay.
so it depends on what hat people are asking me about, will
Yeah.
depend on how I answer, but it's usually always a referral to somebody else
Hmm.
that can do a great job.
I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful. In fact, we might need to get this list, this wins list, favorite list, so I could add a little
Uh,
blurb, because
yeah.
clearly, Pablo is winning out over Chris or whoever.
But Pablo told me about it 2 months ago. He's not taking new clients.
Right.
So yeah,
You got
yeah.
to take him off the list. You have to
So
update.
Chris is number one now.
Chris is number one. You heard that, Chris? You're number
Yep.
one. You heard it right here.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll get that. Well, for those that live in the Dallas area who are listening to this podcast or watching it, maybe that might be helpful. You have wins an endorsed list of people of
You bet.
referrals.
You
I
bet.
love that. I love that.
Valerie, just call Winn and he'll tell you who you need to talk to.
There you
There
go.
you go. Yeah.
Well, I don't really want to get all those calls. Don't make me do the switchboard win, please. Oh, wow.
So let me ask you, Valerie, who do you like to, what fills you up with joy when you're helping people?
When I help people, I kind of like the advice part, the giving
Advice?
advice and resources. Because I'm a coach, I don't always lead with just advice. Go do this, go do that. I ask a lot of questions first to understand what it is that people are up to. So I hope that's been your experience, that I'm not just like, oh, do this, and that. I think coaching is a way that I help and support people, right? It's like, well, what about this bothers you? Or what is it that's been getting in the way? Or, hey, how have you gone about this that you might want to apply to this other situation? So that's kind of my nature, primarily because I'm curious. And then also because I don't want to tell someone something that doesn't fit or doesn't resonate for them. And the way I find that out is by the process of elimination, is asking these questions. So that's
Okay.
my most natural. Every once in a while, I'll do like a referral as well. If I feel like, oh yeah, what you're talking about is really connecting with me here. Most of the time though, it's not, it's someone like you asking me questions about how I went about becoming a speaker, or what are some of the resources that I used. And so it's not always as simple as, here's the photographer that I used, right?
Right.
It's not always
Yeah.
tangible information that I'm giving. So
Yes.
that's one of the reasons I have to be so curious about where they're at. Like you said, that what's the level, what are they ready for? In fact, I think one of our last conversations, I was
Uh,
just like, I opened up the faucet and I was just like, "Rrr," and I said, wait, I have more. Do you need more right now?
I didn't know if you were going to bring that up, but I
Oh,
was like,
go.
yeah, I was like, wow, no one else has asked me these questions. I'm not ready for that. No, I don't want to think about that yet. And I told you, I said, no, Valerie, no,
Yeah,
I'm not in the right mindset to
yeah,
do that right now.
yeah.
I didn't realize this was a therapy session. And you know, this is not what that conversation was supposed to go like.
Oh, was it really therapy like? I can't remember what I asked you.
You made me think,
Okay.
and I'm not good at thinking. So,
Oh my goodness, whatever. But you're right. You
yes,
were in the, but that's such an important distinction because you were in the get it done mode. And
yes,
where I come in my coaching sometimes pauses people from the go. It's
right,
not the immediate, hey, like here, this is the information I need, give it to me so I can keep going. It's more of a, well, think about this, think about that. And it does maybe sometimes the perception is that maybe slows people down or pushes them to take a step back, which may not be where you are. So that's brilliant. Yeah.
yeah. But no, it was
Okay.
you were probably one of the only ones that came at my answer in that way.
Yeah.
And I appreciated it. It made me think. You know, after we got off the phone, I was like, okay, I need to think about this some more. Let's look at this in a different way. Yeah. Just like, you know, we were talking about my speaking style before
Yeah.
we hit record on this, and you're like, well, when, you know, if you think your speaking style should be something different, then gear it towards that way. Is what I heard.
Hmm.
You said it much more eloquently.
No,
That's
that's
what I
basically.
heard. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, you know, let's try that. So
Yeah. But I'm just so committed that whatever we do, I do this for myself too, but whatever we do, whatever we choose to do, this very limited life experience that we have and time on this planet and resources of energy, money, and all those things, that we do it in a way that brings us joy, that makes us come alive. In fact, you were one of the first podcasts that I created was Time to Come Alive. And you were
or
a guest on that one. We talked a lot about your creativity and where that came from and all that. Because I love tapping into that with people. And so what I love to give people in my network is the opportunity for whatever they're doing to make sure that they're excited about it, to feel alive with it. And so if I don't if I don't see that or hear that, a lot of my questions might be geared to like, well, how would you enjoy that more? What would be more fulfilling or whatever?
yeah,
So well, and I so appreciate you too, also saying like, hey, you know what? I'm not ready for that right now, because what I wouldn't like is for someone to just kind of, okay, okay. I'm like, oh my gosh, Valerie had so much. I'm like so overwhelmed, or that had no relevance whatsoever on where I am in the process. And so I think
right,
it's so important that when we are reaching out to others in our network, to be one very explicit about what we want or what we need. Hey, and when we're getting something that doesn't seem to resonate, we don't have to shut person down totally, but we can at least say, whoa, that sounds fascinating. I don't think I'm quite ready for that right now, but let's pick up in 6 months, or I'll reach out
yeah.
to you when I am. What do you think? How would you approach something like that?
No, I think you're totally correct. I think that the older we get, the easier it is to say no
Yeah.
because we have less time
So
for everything.
true.
Um, you know, as a photographer, I very rarely said no to anything. As a
Mm.
handyman, I say no to 90% of what people ask. Just because, you know, I'll crawl under my wife's sink, but I'm not going to crawl under your sink. I know how to do it. I'm just not going to do it. So I think people respect it when you say no in a
Yeah.
nice way.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that you have to be in the right state of mind to hear different answers, but you have to be
Mhm.
open to hearing everything
Yeah.
and take what you hear and use it however you want to,
Yeah.
however you think it can benefit you.
Yes.
Sure.
Ah,
Because if you only want to hear one answer, then don't ask your wife. Don't ask your partner. You know,
they will tell you the
yeah,
truth.
you know, I know I can call friends and they'll love whatever I say.
Mm.
Well, that's not that's being a friend, but that's not being a helpful friend.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want somebody to go, well, when, that's a stupid idea, or why did you think that way, or that's not going to work, or
Mm.
like you, hey, let's dig deeper. That
Yeah.
may be right, that may work, but let's figure out the reasons why.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So good.
I think different friends are going to give you different advice,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to call Pablo for speaking advice. I'll call him for business advice because he's a
Sure.
fabulous businessman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
To be very selective. Yeah. So
yeah,
what would you say, if you had to identify places that are working for you really well? Sounds like you have quite a bit, right? You have these practices like the list, you're reaching out to the 25 people on LinkedIn. Like you have some very specific strategies that seem to be working for you. Anything else that's working for you that you want to share? And or anything that's not been working for you that would be helpful to kind of warn people about. Not warn, maybe just share.
yeah. I think that if you're scared of something,
Mm,
like I think for me and most speakers, it's all trash talk in our head. We're not
yeah.
good enough. We can't be out there. We don't have a message.
Mm,
No one's going to like us.
mhm,
Just put it out there and let the world decide, if they like you or not.
yeah.
That it's really hard. I used to be like when I would go photograph lawyers in law firms,
Mhm.
I pretty much looked like a lawyer. Now, this was about 20 years ago, but I had slacks on and beautiful shoes and a nice button-down dress press shirt.
Okay.
Now, if I go photograph lawyers in a law firm, which I don't do anymore, but at the end of my career, I did. I go in jeans and a button-down shirt and tennis shoes. It's like, whatever. I don't care anymore. You know, so I think what's worked for me over the years is just knowing who I am now
Yeah.
and not really caring.
Yeah.
Knowing that my background and my friendly traits and my philosophy and my views are going to be valuable to my friends, family, network, clients, and
Yeah.
that's all I care about.
Yeah.
So I think what hasn't worked for me is when I've been trying to be somebody else
Mm.
or being a version of what somebody wants me to be.
What do you mean?
Um, just not just
For example, like being a version that's of someone else wants you to be. Like, what do you
okay.
mean by
Here's a very simplistic thing. I had a client that I went out to his house last week. He had a condo. It was 20 degrees here in Dallas. It was cold. He didn't understand why the floor on this side of his dining room French doors was cold.
Okay.
And I was like, well, sir, it's because you've got concrete here. The concrete slab goes out to the outside. It's 20 degrees, so the cold seeps through the concrete, up through the
Mm.
floorboards, and it's going to be cold. Well, is there anything you can do for this? And I'm like, well, you can put a heating blanket down
Carpet.
over it. Like you wear socks. You
Yeah.
know, and then he had a couple of little bitty wind cracks in his doorway.
Mm.
And this was a young man. This is a guy in his 30s.
Okay.
He wasn't an old guy.
Yeah.
I said, well, just some pill and stick weather stripping is all you need right here. Home Depot, you can get it for like $8. And he's like, well, can you do that? I'm like, well, yeah, I've got $160 minimum. If I do it, it's gonna be 160, and it's like, and
Yeah.
and then he's like, well, what about the floor? And he kept going back to the floor. Finally, I was like, sir, I'm sorry. Whatever I do is not going to be up to your standards.
Mm.
Whatever I do, I'm not going to be able to help you enough. And I realized he wasn't going to understand why I couldn't help him enough
Huh.
because I couldn't satisfy him.
Yeah.
I couldn't, I didn't have the answers he was looking for.
Hmm.
I said, sir, I'm very sorry. I'm not your guy. I can't help you.
Yeah.
When I get back to the office, I'll send you two other handymen that may be able to help you more.
Mm.
And so I left. And I felt really bad for him because I didn't fix his problems,
Right.
but I felt okay about it because I stood up for myself.
Yeah.
You know, um,
Ooh.
And, and so when I go back to the office, I send 2 handymen, one I know, and then another one, it's a company that has about 20 trucks on the street. They're super expensive. And they're going to come in, they're going to charge them for a trip fee, no matter what. And they're going to say, sure, we can fix this. We're going to take out your French doors and put in a whole new French door that's state of the art. Maybe he'll say okay to that. I gave him a solution, even though I couldn't help him, even though I know that solution is not going to help him.
It's not going to be what, yeah.
So I was true to myself. I felt okay about it. And that's at the end of the day, as long as you feel okay about what you do in a nice way, I think it's okay. So that's, that was a situation where, I let my client down, but I didn't let myself down. So it was kind of okay, but not. But if I would have known how he was over the phone, I just didn't do enough research on the phone. I probably never should have gone out there to start with.
Really? What do you mean? When you spoke to him, what would you have done differently?
Sometimes there's indications that I don't want to work with somebody. Like if they've got, if I say, hey, can you send me some pictures? Well, no, I don't, I can't do that. Just come over. I just want you to come over and take a look at it. Okay, you've got to jump through 1 or 2 hoops to work with me. I'm busy, I'm not inexpensive. So, the first step I always say is, hey, send me a picture. Great. I meet with, I call it the go see what you want. Either Monday afternoons or Friday afternoons. Those are my 2 times. If you can't accommodate one of those 2 times, maybe a Saturday, but maybe not. Okay, that's it. Then people have to work how I want to work.
Yeah.
And if they can do that, we're gold. But again, it goes back to saying no sometimes. You go to a doctor's office and they're going to say, I can see you at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning or 4 weeks from now on Friday afternoon at 6:30.
And we make it work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're professional.
100%.
We are professionals.
Yeah.
Now, we are a lot friendlier than, most, I shouldn't say that. Dr. Padilla, my doctor is just wonderful. He's a great
we may not have the same infrastructure, right? The barrier of entry may not be as deep as when you're trying to get an appointment with a doctor, but that accessibility, that's interesting.
I reached out to a friend of mine. I hadn't talked to her like in 10 years. She lives in Seattle with her husband. They moved there. She's a speaker. I see her on LinkedIn occasionally. Text her, hey, I'm getting into speaking. Love to visit with you. She's like, sure, Winn. Here's my calendar. I'm free in 3 weeks. Pick a day, pick a time on these, in 3 weeks on these 3 days, and I'd be happy to visit with you. I'm like, okay, if I want to talk to her, I play her way.
That's it. Yeah. That's so good. I appreciate that, especially now in my era, is my menopause era, right? I know that my level of energy and interest has changed in so many ways. I've always, want to help people, that's for sure. But I think now the discipline, I call the business is called Connect to Joy. And it's not just because it's a fun, positive name. It's because I really feel that that's, I want to connect with people who are joyful. I want to help people connect to their own joy, but I also want to connect to mine. And so what I notice is how I feel when I'm having a conversation with someone. If I'm offered a project or if I'm working with somebody that could be a potential client and I don't have, I rely on my gut for a lot of information, right? My intuition. And so when I notice that I'm not feeling the bare minimum for me would be like interest. Right?
Which is pretty low. Which with you is pretty low. I mean,
it's a low bar, right? I'm interested in a lot of things. So, I mean, if I'm interested, like, this sounds interesting. I want to know more. Like if you can't cross that bar of interest, then it's a definite no. I know that now about myself. I'm like, if I'm not interested, if I'm gonna have to go out of my way and do a bunch of research and try to figure out and all this to get interested, it's not gonna be it. So I will say I'm very comfortable in saying no and offering hey, there's somebody else maybe that could do this, or here's what I recommend you do to find the person, right? But then if I notice myself getting like ideas, getting excited. I'm like, oh, I think I have a way of doing this. In fact, as a speaker, one of the things that I love the book, The Referrable Speaker by Michael Port. I don't know if you've read it
Yes.
already.
Yeah, I've read it. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I've got it on
perfect.
my shelf.
Yeah, but so much of what he talks about in the book, he and Andrew Davidson is really about how to best connect, with your own message, right? Letting people know who you are while you're doing what you're doing. And I think I thought I would have to what's the word? Not just adapt, but I would have to meet people's needs based on their criteria. Okay, they want this, they want this. Okay, so I need to figure out how to give them this and that. If I was interested and I was feeling excited but I now see that, oh, I actually have all the ingredients. They want me to cook it a certain way. I think
Right.
I can take my ingredients and
Yeah.
create this meal,
Yeah.
right? Versus before, oh my gosh, I think I'm gonna have to go out and find all these ingredients because that's so that, nope. I now know that, oh, here's my basic set of ingredients. I cook this way, by the way. I'm using this analogy, but I
Oh,
actually cook like
okay.
and I know where to substitute. I know I can make it come as close to this. It'll be satisfying and fulfilling meal for them. And I think if I can't figure a way to use what I have and who I am to fulfill that, it's a definite no.
Right.
Right. And so I think, but there's a discipline that comes with it because I think as a self-employed, entrepreneur, sometimes especially if we have a scarcity mentality that, oh my gosh, if I don't say yes, or is this person they're never gonna come back to me, or they're gonna tell people that I'm not good to work with or whatever. But I
Right.
found that the times when I am really in alignment with myself and I present that to someone, and if I can make it work, I make it work. And if I can, I give them another avenue to make it work. One, like you said, I fulfill my own needs, and I think the trust and credibility actually does go up. Credibility
Yes.
and reliability go up, especially if I can tell them, hey, here's a way that you can get your needs met. It's not through me, but here's another way.
Right.
Yeah, that for me has been so important. So I'm glad to hear that, I'm not the only one. You're
Yeah.
saying it too.
Two things with that,
Yeah.
Valerie. I think people just want a solution.
Yeah.
Whether you're the person that gives them the solution or you're the person that gives them the area to go and get the
Yeah.
solution, they just want an answer. They just want a solution for that.
You're right.
And when you're talking about, when you meet with someone or talk to them on the phone and you get excited, you sometimes have to pull back. You go, okay, I don't want to throw up on them on the first phone call. I gotta hold, I gotta hold some of this back, and this is good stuff. Let's write
This
it
is
down.
it. Yeah.
Um,
Here's a taster menu.
yeah. There was I was at a house recently, a couple of days ago, and I was just doing some door adjustments.
Hmm.
And this was a $2 million house, a real young couple. I mean, like I'm thinking early 30s, just
Hmm.
gorgeous, Barbie and Ken looking couple,
Hmm.
gorgeous people. Had a little girl, a little baby, had a nanny, just a great
Hmm.
looking family. Um, and so I was in there adjusting the door, and I could hear him in his study, kind of like mine with the doors closed, and he was talking finances or something, and he kept saying and oh, I'm here, I'm this, and oh, that's cool. And I was thinking, I gotta tell him about Toastmasters. I gotta tell him about ums, ands, and ahs. He's a professional. He's got to get that out of his vocabulary.
Just a lot of crutch words.
Yes. And I was
Uh,
like, I don't know him that well yet. I cannot critique his phone conversation that I overheard. I'm the handyman. I'm not the
oh,
speaking
that's
coach.
that's risky. So what'd you do?
I didn't do anything. I went and
You
did my
didn't.
job, and now,
Okay.
and I befriended him and his wife. And so now I've got a bid. I'm putting a bid together to paint their living room, or paint their dining room, and put crown up, and put some baseboards in, and do an accent wall. So I've got like 6 projects that I'm bidding on now for that. Off of one, just realigning a couple of doors,
Yeah.
but being friendly, and being supportive. I gave him the list, and his
Yeah.
wife was like, "Oh my God, yeah, we need this, you know." But I did not go. I didn't throw up on him. I didn't say, "Have you had Toastmasters? You need some help, young man."
I overheard your very
Okay,
private
almost.
conversation.
Well, I did. I said, and I told him that. I said, "Are you a financial planner?" And he's like, "Well, we're in the finance business. I'm like, oh, I kind of overheard a little bit of what you're talking about. I'm just really curious. I always want to know what my clients do. And then after that, I was like, oh, what does your wife do? And he told me, and I was like, oh, I need to charge y'all more.
Ah.
But I try to be friendly and nice and helpful.
Yeah.
But saying you need to go to Toastmasters is a little too helpful. Now, if I'm in the job, if I'm in this house, the next 4 or 5 times over the years and we become a little bit closer,
Mhm.
I might mention it. And I would preface it by going, I was 35 before my dad told me something that changed my life.
Mm.
And he told me about Toastmasters. And I mean, and the first thing I'm going to say, first thing I said was, Dad, why the hell didn't you tell me about this when I was 22? And that happened. It really happened to me. So I
Really?
would preface that conversation with Dad's story,
Yes.
but I'm not ready to go there yet.
Well, in the trust equation, that would be like you don't have the intimacy with that particular client to say something like that or to have made that kind of observation. It
Yeah.
wasn't in the context of your relationship, your working contract with them.
But I've got that relationship with a couple of normally I'm dealing with all the moms.
Yeah.
Moms run the house, I'm dealing with the moms. I've got that conversation, that trust with a couple of the moms.
Mm.
We have deep text conversations about life and about
Oh,
their life and what's going
yeah.
on in their life. And,
Yeah.
it's something that I never anticipated doing as a handyman, is talking to these ladies about
Mm.
what's going on in my life.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you're in people's homes. Again, your friendly, approachable nature makes it easy for
Easy.
people to connect with you that way. And I think
Yeah.
that's really what we're all looking for, even if it's a one and done, right? That is a transaction of service with a client, or even a connection network that someone you sat next to in an event. Not everything turns into a multiple year reaching back out again, right?
Right.
We're in
Yeah.
all levels of
Yeah.
friendships and connections, and sometimes those connections can be regenerated later on in the future. So,
Uh,
I'm so
Well,
excited.
you never know who they're going to refer you to. It's
Yeah.
all about referrals. It's about, but it's about reputation.
Yes.
My talk now is about having my company's Wynn's Real Handy, and my talk is
Mhm.
about handy reputation.
Yeah.
And it's how you build your reputation over your lifetime.
Mm. Is there anything about this, about building a reputation, that you should share before we end our conversation? I think that sounds like there might be some wisdom here for people. What's one or two lessons that you have absolutely either learned, or that you want to, if you were to give people advice about their reputation, how to manage it, or what to make, to
How
make
to build
known?
it.
Yeah, what would you say?
Quick story.
Yeah.
One of the first guys I met in Dallas was called Billy Bob Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And Billy Bob was a good old boy from West Texas. And I was introduced to him from another good old boy. And I went in, I sat down, and one of the first things he said to me when we started visiting, so he got real close. He said, Winn, if we're going to be associated, when I call you, you call me back and I'll do the same. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I realize it now. With those words, he was wanting me to have a great reputation. He was wanting to hold me in the highest regards.
Mm.
And the way I could do all of that was by simply calling him back.
Mm.
And so for 35 years, we have been profitably and responsibly calling each other back.
Wow.
And this is someone that I can't help him in any single way. I have nothing he wants. I cannot help his world at hardly at all. But every time I call him, he picks up the phone or he calls me back. And when
Yeah.
he calls me back, and when he calls me, I'm like, hey, I'm on a podcast, Billy Bob. I can't talk right now, but I'll call you as soon as I'm off. Or, hey, oh, I've got to go to the bathroom real quick. Hang on. I'll go to the bathroom and call Billy Bob back.
Yeah.
And I say that to all my referrals and all my clients. I
Yeah.
say it to, I've said it hundreds of times over the years. If I think you need to know it, and you either get it and we're associated, or you don't get it and I never call you back again.
Wait, you tell them exactly the same thing that Billy Bob told you
I tell them the
about?
Billy Bob story.
Oh, yeah, the story. Okay, got
And if
it.
they understand it, oh yeah, I got right. Oh my God. You know, they understand it and they do it. They
Yeah.
don't understand it, or they, you know, like, oh, well, I'm too busy. You know, I'll call them back whenever I get to, like, I don't want to be associated with you. I'm not going to refer
Mm,
you. I'm not going to use you. You're not going to be in my database. You're not going to be in
yeah.
my world.
Mm,
Now, Valerie, me and you never had that conversation.
no.
We didn't need to. We
I
call it,
am Billy Bob. No, I'm kidding.
you are Billy Bob. You know, so that's one way that you can build your
Yeah.
reputation.
Yeah.
Call people back.
Call people back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so true. Or respond, be responsive. I think
Or
with your,
text them, or you know,
yeah, email,
however they
text,
reach out
whatever.
to you, you do the same to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just be
So
respectful.
good. Simple.
You
It is
know,
so simple. And I think even I'll even go as far as saying that there are times where I have been, people reach out to me that I don't want to spend time reaching back out to, right? And even then, I think I'd love to hear your strategy, but one of the things that I do now, someone will reach out, and look, it could be for a friendly something, or it could be for a business something, right? Whichever one. But if I'm, again, I check in with myself, like, okay, how am I feeling about this? Is this something I should continue and reach out or call back or whatever? Or sometimes I'll just send a text back, hey, thank you so much. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. Hope everything continues to go well, or something like that, period. No questions. I don't ask a question that requires
right.
them to
Yes.
respond.
You
I
don't.
don't offer anything that requires them to connect with me again, right? So, but I wish them well in in without saying it like farewell, bon voyage.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how would
Yeah.
you handle that if there's somebody that reaches out that you're not interested in following up with? Does that ever happen?
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I reach out, I respond to everybody because um I'm just that, you know, we're just that way. We don't
Yeah.
want to piss anybody off too much.
Sure.
Um,
Too much.
but yeah, I think it just I'm the same way. I'll just, you know, yeah, great, glad to hear from you. That's it. Yeah, you're
That's it.
not, you know, the person that I reached out to and meeting, you know, said, hey, get on my calendar in 2 weeks.
Hmm.
She cared a little bit enough to put me on her calendar,
Yeah.
but she didn't care enough to call me right back. And that's
Hmm.
fine.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't expect you to when you call like that.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, you know, um, it goes back to reputation. You know, my
Yeah.
doctor, Dr. Padilla, who I see twice a year, general physical. He's a woodworker. He's got a wood shop down in his
Is that
basement.
Miguel Padilla?
Huh?
Is that his name, Miguel Padilla? No.
No, his last name's Padilla.
I
I
think
can
I
think of his first name.
I think I've gone to this. Anyways, go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, you know, all we do is we don't talk about problems, and we just talk about woodworking.
Ah.
But you know, a few weeks ago, I had a cold. I texted his office, and he sent me a personal text on his personal line at 7:30 Friday night with a script.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, I love this guy, man. This is my doctor. Yeah, he took care of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You would never expect a doctor to do that 7:30 on a Friday night from his personal cell phone.
Not
Now, I
likely.
had his personal cell phone because we still kind of connected on woodworking.
Sure.
Um, but I didn't ask him through his cell phone that Friday night, hey, can I get a script? I just sent it to
Mm.
his work number. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that you can be nice, but you don't have to be inquisitive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's so interesting.
yeah.
Very cool. I think, we can always get better at connecting. One, I think the message is being authentic to ourselves and honoring ourselves more so than just authenticity can sometimes be a word that we bandy about really easily. But I think just being honoring ourselves where we are in life, finding people at a level that really connects with where we are, right? And then letting them know if what we need, being really clear about that. It sounds like for you, being reliable, right? Being the guy, it's really about being reliable and having high levels of trust with the people that you connect with, right? Being credible, reliable, building that intimacy with people, and then always being giver first. So this was such a great conversation. When, oh my gosh, thank you so much for being in this wonderful new adventure of mine.
You bet. Thank you for asking me. It was eye-opening. It was made me think some things, and yeah, thank you
Very
for
cool.
having me, Valerie.
Well, we're gonna get a few things for you from you for the show
Yeah.
notes. Like we need Wynn's favorites, Wynn's
Yes.
favorite things, like the Oprah list. We got the
Yeah.
Winn list.
When's handy list?
Handy list. Very cool. Thank you so much, Lynn. Winn, sorry. Hang list and Winn together. Hang around for a bit.
Okay.
And just want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And wherever in the world you are, have a wonderful rest of the day. Thanks for joining me on this episode of The Circle of Hope. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and share with someone in your circle. And if you're curious about the upcoming book, visit valeriehope.com for updates and extras. Until then, stay connected.